It's not the most comfortable, I'll tell you.
It's okay.
So, welcome all. It's a real pleasure to have you here. And it's a particular pleasure for me to welcome here Maria Bartiromo. This is a special event today of our series on Italian-American women's success stories. And I can hardly imagine anybody more appropriate than Maria to tell a story of a successful Italian-American woman in New York. Let me thank you since the beginning also Stefania Spatti, who will be the moderator, our friend, and from class CNBC. You know, when we launched last year this initiative of, we wanted to tell stories of Italian and Italian-American women in New York, because I sensed when I arrived at the very beginning that we had meetings with lots of businessmen, ministers coming, and 90% were men. So I said, but this is not telling the real story, because there is a lot to say about women success stories in New York. And I like the idea of this contamination between Italian and Italian-American women. But this is the first event where we have one single guest, and you can imagine why, because I think we want to devote time enough to hear about you, your personal and professional story. Now, Maria Bartiromo doesn't need any presentations. The journalist, editor, TV star in a way. And actually, she's been a trailblazer in many regards. And she's a role model for women all over the US and for journalists, men and women alike, all over the US. And she's always had a very strong personality with her own ideas, one might like or not. But something that nobody can contest about Maria is a very strong attachment to her Italian roots. And this is something I myself discovered when I met her a few months ago for the first time here at the consulate. I had the privilege to bestow on her a decoration al merito della Repubblica Italiana. Now, for being so famous, very well known and successful, still I realized that Maria was touched, thrilled, and very honored to get this decoration. And this tells a lot about her personality. But I'm talking too much. I'm going to sit down and let the floor to Stefania Spatti and to Maria Bartiromo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Consul General, for your hospitality and for organizing this initiative about women and successful women. As he said, she doesn't need an introduction, but her career clearly speaks for her. But I want to sum up briefly her professional trajectory to give you a sense of what she's really achieved. First job, coat check girl at Rex Manor. Her grandfather Carmine's restaurant, named after the ship that brought him here in 1999 from Naples, if I'm correct.
Yes, it didn't actually bring him here, but he did travel on the ship. But the ship was built in the 1930s, and he came in actually 1910.
Okay. She studied economics at NYU, then landed a position at CNN. She was promoted in what was still an up-and-coming cable network. Then she was promoted, and she wasn't convinced about this new role, so she decided to send a tape to rival CNBC. That move would be consequential, as we know, because Roger Ailes, then the chairman of CNBC, offered her a position, and she accepted it. That move would catapulted her in business journalism. That, mind you, we are in 1993. Business journalism, it's still in its infancy as an industry. At only 26, she became the first ever person to report from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. I mean, first person, not first woman, first person ever. For the following 20 years, she would be the face of CNBC, not one face, the face. At the end of 2013, Roger Ailes decides to offer her a new job. And she says, yes, I'm ready to move on, to challenge myself, to push the envelope, and to do something new. And so she decides to move to Fox, where Ailes had become one of the leaders. He launched this channel with basically Rupert Murdoch's money. And here she is, 8 years later, she anchors. I'm reading because I don't want to make any mistake. Mornings with Maria on Fox News Network from Monday to Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Sunday Futures, 10 a.m. Sundays, Fox News Channel. Maria Bartiromo's Wall Street Week on Fridays at 9 p.m. So Maria, when do you sleep?
I always say I sleep in my closet upside down. No, I do. I go to sleep early, so I do get some sleep. But you're right, I do work a lot. And what I would say about the description, thank you so much, Stefania. It's an honor to meet you.
Oh, thank you.
Because I know that you are the face for Class Editori on CNBC Italy on the New York Stock Exchange. So I'm thrilled for you.
Thank you.
But I started my career at CNN. And when I got my internship from NYU at CNN, I wanted to understand and learn as much as I can about just television. And that's when I was a production assistant. And I learned at CNN how to cover a news story as it was happening. And this was an incredible breaking news sort of revolutionary thing, because this was Ted Turner's CNN. And Ted Turner was doing something new, whereas he was creating a news network where they were covering news as it was happening. And as a, like you said, 24, 25-year-old, I was a production assistant and a producer watching Bernard Shaw under the bed in Iraq saying bombs are going off. The first Gulf War was on, and CNN was covering it. And it was totally different than what anybody else was doing, because everyone else was waiting until 6:30 at night or 7 o'clock at night to tell you what happened that day. Ted Turner was doing it live as it was happening. And that's when I decided I wanted to go on air. Because Lou Dobbs was my boss, and he said to me, we're reorganizing the assignment desk, we're gonna put you here. And I said, oh no, I found what I love to do. I like to go in the field. And that's when I said, well, I better put my own tape together.
What did you say in that tape?
Well, what happened was I was at CNN, and I was promoted to, I was an assignment editor. So an assignment editor, which has been, I was on the assignment desk, I would come up with story ideas, I would take a camera crew, go out and shoot video, interview people, and then I would come back, write a script, and somebody else would go on air with it. And so then when Lou promoted me and said, look, we're gonna take you out of this, you're gonna be in the control room, you're gonna be a senior producer, and you'll be in, your anchor's ear, giving her time cues, I said, well, that's gonna take me completely out of the field, and I've made this great network of sources, and now I know what moves on Wall Street and who to call. And I said, that's not really the path that I want to be on. And that's when I realized I needed to do it and put my tape together. So I said, okay. I said, I'll accept the promotion and the raise. Thank you so much. But even though I'm a senior producer for the overnight shows, which means I was in at midnight, done at 8 a.m., I said, can I stick around after my shift ends and go get the economic interviews so that I could go out with a crew? I still wanted to go out with the crew. And what I did was, when I went out with the crew, I would say, oh, before we go back to the studio, can you just shoot me on air? And then I was horrible initially, but I kept doing it, and I would go out, and I would, every time I had a shoot to interview somebody, I had a little paragraph that I was gonna say on air. And I would say, just shoot me doing this. And then I had the tapes, and then that's how I put the tape together. So whatever pieces I had written for somebody else, that's what I was saying on air.
You did it for yourself. You often said that your success and your pro-market philosophy comes from your family. Can you talk about that, and especially the role that your mother had in paving, in a way, your path?
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm so attached to my Italian heritage, because I'm very close to my family, and I am a family girl and a mama's girl. And I think that because of that, I will always give back to the Italian community and the Italian-American community, because my upbringing is everything to me. That's why Angelo knows for 20 years, 25 years, wherever I was in the world, whatever I was doing, I made sure I was in New York for the Columbus Parade so that I could host the Columbus Parade. And my mother has been an incredible influence on me, and my father, because both of my parents always worked incredibly hard. My father worked at the Rex Manor, and my vision of my father will always be standing up in front of a hot stove, sweating, he's got a bandana on his head, and he's cooking. And that's my vision of my dad. My vision of my mother is her walking up our street on 84th Street. She's walking home from work, carrying 6 or 7 grocery bags. She worked a full day at work, and then she came back and she went shopping and then cooked for the family. And by the way, my mother worked at OTB. And as a girl, I was embarrassed. Oh God, my mother works at OTB. My mother found her own job, got a high-paying job, got a pension, got a Social Security, had independence, financial independence, and I'm so proud of her. And I think that because she worked at OTB, I was interested in, and I don't know about gambling, but money, moving, and so I think subconsciously she did set the tone for me.
Yeah.
And she set the tone for me to want to work with excitement. I mean, she would work at the track sometimes, and so being on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, I think, was similar in some ways. I'm not saying that investing is gambling. I don't believe it is, but
Sometimes it can be. Can you keep your microphone just a bit closer? Yeah. Talking about the floor, as you said, I'm the only Italian on the floor, but she was the first one, which is an achievement. So can you talk about what changed between then and now, and how long did it take for you to conquer all these traders? Mind you, still today, it's kind of a male-dominated field. But maybe unlike you at the beginning, I must say I'm loved because all these people are very gentle, very nice. They take care of you. If you miss one day, they call you. Where are you? Something happened to you. So can you talk about that?
well, I think 2 things. First off, you're right, because it's very much like a family down on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. There's a lot of camaraderie, but it was not always like that. And I definitely had to take the hits initially, because initially it really was a total boys club. And when we first asked Dick Grasso if I could go down on the floor and broadcast from the floor of the exchange, a lot of people did not want me there. A lot of people said, no. We don't want a reporter. We don't need this little woman running around at all. But I had a little bit of an edge to me, grew up in Brooklyn, and felt like I belonged there and I should be there. And so I also knew a few people on the floor when I got down there because they knew the Rex. They knew my dad's restaurant. And that was also a feather in my cap. But it was very tough. I can tell you for sure it was very tough. I remember one time I had been on the floor of the exchange. It was only a couple of weeks, and I found out that my boss's boss was coming down to the floor. And it was Jack Welch, because Jack Welch was the chairman and CEO of General Electric, and GE owned CNBC. And I found out that Jack was coming down, and I thought, oh my God, what a break. I'm going to be the one to show Jack Welch around, and I'm going to show him the post of General Electric. And I had just met the specialist of GE a week earlier, George. And George went through all of the trading in GE stock. He showed me where the volume is, who was the buyers, who were the sellers, all the activity in the stock. And I thought, oh my God, this is so fascinating. He taught me a lot. And I knew that Jack Welch would have wanted to know all of that. So I wanted to ask George if he would tell Jack exactly what he told me the week earlier. So I was on the floor of the exchange, and it was, when I first got down there, the camera was all the way over there, like on the ceiling, and it would zoom in. So when I was on, no one really knew when I was on and when I wasn't on. There weren't TVs on the floor like there are now.
Right.
So they would just walk into me, and then other times, they would say, hi, Mom. I mean, they wanted to be annoying. Anyway, so I find out that Jack Welch is coming, and I go over to George to say to George, George, can you explain to Jack what you told me the other day about the trading in GE stock? As I approached the post, there were about 25 guys in earshot. They were sort of standing around. The post looked quiet. It didn't seem like a lot of people were at the post that day, but there were 25 people standing around. And I say, George.
Can I check the microphone?
Yes, of course.
Sorry.
Hi. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess now you can hear me. So did you hear the earlier part of the story? Okay. Thank you. So I went, I say to George, George, and there's a guy 3 times my age standing there with his notepad, with his machine, and he says to me, run along. You don't belong here. This is not for your little TV show. I was mortified. And you know the feeling that you have when you have knots in your stomach. You don't know, someone just attacked you, and I stood tall and I said, and there's about 25 guys watching, waiting for a fight, waiting for my response, and I said, don't talk to me that way. And then I ran along. But I came back, and I kept going back, and I did get Jack to go to George that day, and they had a very good conversation. But the point is later I called Dick Grasso, and I said, Dick, it's not right that I'm here on the floor and I have to get this guy harassing me, telling me to run along. This guy did not want me there at all. May he rest in peace, Mr. Robbins, Mike Robbins. He passed away, but he was old school. And I understood. He didn't want, so later I went into Dick's office and I sat knee to knee with Mike Robbins. And the whole meeting he belittled me. He said, look, stay where you are, don't come around, definitely stay away from GE Post, don't let me see you and you'll be fine. This is not for your little TV show. So it was so many years that Mike Robbins intimidated me. What I found out later was that Mike Robbins was on the board. And so what he said was really important. And when he saw me talking to other people, it would really ruin my cred, because he would get mad at those people for talking to me, and then people wouldn't talk to me. So I literally would walk around the building not to pass Mike Robbins. So one day, it was the dot-com crash, and everything was falling in value. I needed to get in front of the camera immediately. I could no longer walk around the building. I went right to my post. And sure enough, Mike stopped me, and he would say what he always would say to me, "Ha! Save your money." And I was so mad, I said to him, no, you save your money, because the dot-com was crashing. And anyway, I'm not telling this story as well as it is because it was a great story. Anyway, Mike Robbins eventually left the floor. I was so relieved when he left. A couple of months later, I go to a dinner for Goldman Sachs, and I go with the vice chairman of Goldman, invites me to Daniel Restaurant. It was a beautiful restaurant. I get there, I'm enjoying it, I'm meeting all these new people from Goldman Sachs. I'm thinking, this is great, I have all these new sources. Corner of my eye, Mike Robbins walks in, and I think, oh my God, I have to get out of here. He's going to mortify me, he's going to say something in front of all of these people. I don't want them to know that he doesn't like me. So I start backpedaling out and like leaving. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not staying for dinner. I don't want to be here at all. Oh, hello. Said, Maria, it's Mike Robbins. I said, I know. How are you? He said, I just want you to know, I'm sorry for harassing you all of those years. I haven't seen your little TV show, but I read your article in Business Week, and you're doing a good job. And I felt so satisfied. And I said, thank you, Mike. I shook his hands. Bygones be bygones. But the truth is it was very hard for some people to get over the fact that a woman with a camera is on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Another time, this guy, he had this metal thing, and he didn't like what I was saying in front of the AIG Post. He rammed it in my back, and I was on air. I had to go to medical. He was suspended. But the point is, it was very tough in the early days. So I know that you feel like a minority now. There are a lot of women on the floor right now.
Yeah, compared to them, for sure, but they are still a minority. And in any case, these people are very nice. And
yeah,
they
very
want
nice.
to learn the Italian, by the way. I'm on
very
there,
nice.
and they come by and say, ciao.
Very nice.
They're
The
very
people
nice.
on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange are wonderful. And I've made so many friends there. After all, I was there 15 years. So, but it was just tougher in the beginning.
Maria, since then, the financial industry has changed a lot. More people invest. They are more sophisticated. There is a bunch of people who call themselves apes and buy and sell, discuss what to buy and what to sell on a forum called Wall Street Bets. Apps like Robinhood claim to democratize investing. Is all of this for the better, you think?
I'm sorry?
Do you think that all these developments, the apps like Robinhood, Coinbase, people being more involved in the financial industry without maybe having even a consultant to invest, do you think it's good?
I do. I think right now there are so many options for investors that there is a great, great opportunity to create wealth for the long term. So I do think it's very good. However, I think now with the explosion of information and with the explosion of options, the onus is on the individual. to understand that not everything is good, and to understand that you need to do research to understand where growth is and what would be a safe investment. But I think it's very good that there's been an explosion of information. It has been democratized. People are understanding investments and how to create their own individual wealth more than ever. So yeah, I think it's very good.
Any regrets in your career?
No, no, I don't. I love what I'm doing. I would do it all again. I mean, I have little things that I say, oh, I should have taken that position, or I should have done this show. But overall, I've been very, very grateful to be able to have really a front row seat in the global economy for about 30 years now, from watching all of these different cycles, from the dot-com boom to the dot-com bust to the housing boom and the housing bust to globalization, 9/11. You know, it's just been extraordinary.
Don't tell us if a bus is coming again, because we don't want to hear that. You represent the American dream of Italian descent, from Brooklyn, made your way through, working hard. But is nowadays working hard enough? Is the American dream still alive?
I think that the American dream is still alive. I think that working hard is a requirement. I don't think it will come easy. But I think what's most important is to find something that you love and really pursue that, and get a position or a job in something that you actually want to jump out of bed to do. I mean, I was very fortunate to be able to find journalism and broadcast journalism because I love it, and I didn't mind getting up at midnight and going to work, or 2 in the morning and going to work, because it does require hard work, because there are a lot of people who want that job. There are a lot of beautiful people who want that job. So how do you stand out, and how do you bring a value that will enable you to have longevity?
Since you work so much, I guess you haven't reached a work-life balance, but I assume that it's fine with that. You're fine with that, am I right?
It is. I do work a lot, but I love it, and I'm lucky to have a supportive family, supportive husband. So yes, you're right. I have not figured out the work-life balance.
But what is the situation among the women around you who don't have the resources that you have? How is that?
Well, I mean, what do you mean resources? I mean, resources, I certainly am grateful.
You are successful. If you wanted to take more time off, have children, you would have a support, a financial support to do all of this, even if you were working hard. But many women are not in that situation, and yet they work. So what do you see around you?
Well, I think from my standpoint is I grew up in a middle-class household. I was very grateful and lucky to be able to be born in America, I think, and to be able to be raised in Brooklyn with loving parents who worked very hard and set that tone for me. But I did not always have resources. I worked hard, and I was able to gain resources. So it's a different today than it was 30 years ago. But when I was starting out my career, I was working 2 and 3 jobs. I worked as a co-check girl. I worked in a photo lab with my best friend here. She worked in a photo lab with me in Brooklyn. We worked several jobs just to make sure to get ahead. So I didn't always have the resources. And my mother always would say to me, I would say, and this was the lesson for me from a little girl. When I was a little girl in Brooklyn, I remember the ice cream truck used to come down the block on 84th Street, and I would hear the bells, and I would say to my mother, Mom, can I get a cone? Can I get a cone? And she would always say the same thing. You can have a cone, but how will you pay for it? And I was like, oh. And then I started to save nickels and save dimes. And so I learned the value of saving for the long term at a very young age. And so that's how I created resources.
In 2014, in an interview with the LA Times, you stated, I'm not looking to get into political fights or politicize business. What happened? Becoming more politicized was the way to actually make it through in Fox?
No, not at all. I studied business at NYU and started working in business and in markets at CNBC. And for 20 years, I studied balance sheets and corporations, and my big get would be the CEO of General Electric or the CEO of IBM, and I loved it. But after 25 years of doing business news, 20 at CNBC and 5 years at CNN Business News, I wanted to expand my own portfolio and stretch myself. After 25 years, I wasn't growing. I felt like I wasn't learning anything else. And you know, sometimes you know when you're not growing. And I said, well, I had run into Roger Ailes, like you said, at a couple of different events. He kept saying to me, when are you coming to Fox? When are you coming to Fox? And I just said, after 20 years with CNBC, I thought, well, maybe I should just see what else is out there. And so he offered me an opportunity to create a business show to compete with CNBC, but also have a Sunday program on Fox News Channel. And he said that I could create my own show which would marry Wall Street and Washington. And that's something that I wanted to do because I used to watch the Sunday morning political shows and not really know what they were saying. I didn't really understand politics at all. I didn't have to study Washington. I didn't need to study policy. I was in the dot-com boom. I was in the growth boom. I was traveling the world, building out the CNBC brand. Went to Europe and Asia, Brazil, all over, building out the CNBC brand. But there comes a time that if you're not growing, and so I was thinking, well, maybe this is something I need to learn. So I got to Fox in 2014, and that was right before a presidential election. So 14, I get there, Barack Obama is the president. We start looking at the next election. 2015, I'm working at Fox, learning policy, understanding more. I start really uncovering corruption, which is incredible. I just had never realized this went on in Washington, but it really does. And then I started following the election. And so throughout 2016, I moderated the show at the conventions, and I moderated two presidential debates. And so I learned a lot, and I really stretched myself. And I feel much more informed today about the world, having filled that hole in terms of policy, politics in Washington.
I have to ask this, though. It's no secret that you have supported Trump even when he claimed that the 2020 election were stolen. And many of your supporters, maybe even in the Italo-American community, were kind of disappointed by that. What do you tell them?
So in other words, the Italian-American community was disappointed by what?
By the fact that you sided with Trump, even when he claimed, for example, that the 2020 elections were stolen.
Well, I think that when you go back to 2020, you can see a situation where it was completely new. I interviewed the sitting Attorney General, Bill Barr, in August of 2020, and he said to me, if we do mail-in ballots for the election, that will open up the floodgates of fraud. Because when you have mail-in ballots, it's very difficult to see exactly who voted and how they voted. And at that time, there were a lot of mail-in ballots because of COVID. So there were a lot of questions about the 2020 election. And I think that the support of Trump was looked at and debated way before the 2020 election. People just didn't like him, right? And I found that it was very unfair for the media to have a complete unwillingness and incapability of covering him fairly.
As an outsider, I would say that that is true. If you are a Democrat, you tend to watch CNBC or MSNBC. If you are a Republican, you tend to watch Fox or Newsmax. And basically, these channels just feed their own public. And so I feel like, I wonder sometimes if this is the way to do things. But I guess that this is the American way.
No, it's not about being an American at all. I think it's about fairness. It depends on what matters to you. Does it matter to you talking about things like inflation at 40-year highs? Does it matter to you about policy that is good for America? Or do you prefer to see policy good for the world? When Donald Trump was elected, I think that there was a big population of people who felt that they were forgotten, that the elites, that the globalists wanted cheap labor, wanted cheap jobs. They wanted to send all their jobs to Mexico. They wanted to send jobs to China. And that left a lot of people out in the cold. And I think when Donald Trump came into power, he started saying, America first, America first. And while that didn't sit well with some people around the world, he was going to be the president of America. And so I think that the debate, I mean, look, you can argue and debate Donald Trump as a person all day long, and you can say, I don't like his personality and I don't like his tweeting, but if you're just looking at policy, the policy that the Trump administration came out with was moving the needle on economic growth and the fortunes of Americans. And that's why I was very taken aback that the media had a real unwillingness and incapability to cover him fairly. There was something else. A few minutes ago, I mentioned to you corruption. And when I was at CNBC, I always thought the media business was among the most, competitive and like cutthroat industry you'll ever meet and you'll ever understand. Well, that's not true. The most cutthroat industry that you'll ever see is politics. And when I got to Fox, I tripped over a story that was an enormous story. And what that story was about Trump-Russia collusion. And if you remember, the entire country was up in arms about Trump colluding with Russia. And I knew who to trust. And I started having on the congressmen who actually saw the redacted materials and saw the interviews behind closed doors, and they knew what had taken place. And I got to know the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, and then Judiciary Committee member John Ratcliffe. And they told me everything that had gone on. And what had gone on was that it was a total made-up story, that Trump never colluded with Russia. And for a 4-year period, the entire country thought that Trump colluded with Russia. And I said, I don't think this is true. And I had the courage to come out and stick my neck out and say, you know what? I interviewed Devin Nunes this weekend, and he said this. And I interviewed John Ratcliffe this weekend, and he said that. And once I figured out that that story was a lie, once I figured out that the entire country was talking about collusion, this guy cheating to become the president, I said, wow. I have to say this from the rooftops. I've got to tell everybody I know what I found out. I've got to report the truth so that Americans understand that this is simply a situation of one political party making up stories to take down another political party.
I think that is true in both ways.
And that is why the media, like yourself, think that I became so political. No. It wasn't about Donald Trump.
So you're saying that you were just doing your job saying the truth?
No, what I'm saying is it was never about Donald Trump, any support that you're referring to. It was about fairness. One political campaign should not be able to make up a story and then get the FBI and the CIA to run with it and then the media to run with it and lie to the American people. That's what took place, and that's what you're seeing play out right now. You may not know this yet, but you will know this when the trial of Michael Sussman ends. It just started today, and there are other indictments, Danchenko, and so you may not know this story. I knew it in 2017, and I felt the need to tell everyone what I knew, and as a result, some people thought I was being supportive of Trump. It wasn't about Trump.
But you know him tell us that, do you think he's going to run again?
I do think he'll run again.
Do you think that Biden will run again?
What do you think? Do you think so?
I don't think so, but who knows? Questions? Somebody wants to ask a question?
Thank you.
So don't be shy. Many might.
Italian people love you, and you are our hero.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks. Well,
You have a question. Thank you, Maria, for coming here today. I mean, it's very touching. We appreciate you telling us about your experience. I have a question, actually, that Stefania brought up before. She was talking about depolarization, I think, of the media in the United States right now, which is pretty clear, right? You have several medias that are pretty much representing one or the other political party. Is it something that, do you think it's going to be fixed? Is it going to change the next couple of years? Is it something that we need to change? And is the change starting with the media, or is it starting with the population, us?
I think it's a really important question that you ask, and I think it should change. I think it will be hard. I think what has happened is people have, people have decided where they want to see the country and where they want the country governed, and the entire Congress is incredibly polarized. I mean, there was never a situation where, Republicans and Democrats couldn't have coffee together in the Congress, but they are actually very much against one another because I think the extremes of each party have hijacked those parties. The media really should be just neutral in the middle. I honestly think, I go back to the Russia collusion story. I think it divided this country so terribly, and it was all based on a lie, a political takedown. And I think unless we see accountability in terms of, people, saying, look, this was wrong. We should not have surveilled, spied on Trump campaign officials when it wasn't warranted, but it was political. And so I think it's going to be very hard. I think we really need to see honesty on both sides.
Other questions?
Maria, thank you for delivering the truth. And
Thank you,
you are a self-made person. We are very proud. As we say, siamo orgogliosi. But how can we, as an Italian Americans, improve a mentoring program for more Italian Americans to follow in your footsteps? Thank you.
I think it's about outreach and getting the word out. I mean, a lot of young Italian Americans don't even understand the opportunities that are potentially available to them. I think, there are so many opportunities like the Columbus Foundation and NEOF and areas where you could actually get scholarships. And Italian Americans don't even know that. I mean, the CCF has done such a great job in terms of scholarships, and I think plenty of people aren't aware. And I think it's also just more press to get the word out that we want to support emerging Italian American people to get success in their lives. I don't know what else can do it other than outreach.
Do you think one more question or no?
No, it's for the people online. Yes.
Potential presidential candidate.
I'm sorry?
Do you see Elon Musk as potential presidential candidate?
Myself? Elon Musk. Oh, Elon Musk. I was like, yeah, no, I don't think,
With the Italian accent, it comes out like that.
I don't think Elon wants to give up all of that wealth. Right? Because I don't see him being political. I don't know what he's doing in terms of Twitter right now, but he certainly has exposed them in a
Yes,
very
yes.
way. So was that the idea the whole time?
If he wants to run, he spent $20 billion, he would make it, and he doesn't have to spend $44 billion to buy.
Yeah, I don't know that he wants to. I think that he probably would have a hard time giving up the wealth. I'm not sure. Yeah. Is it my fault?
Try this. Unfortunately, time is running out, but I would like to do a quick Q&A, like
Okay.
question, answer, question, answer.
Sure.
When will inflation go down?
2025.
No, come on,
No, I
Maria.
think things will lessen later, but let's not forget we're right now entering the peak driving months. So oil prices and gasoline will probably go higher.
And gasoline is already-
Later on in the year, with the Federal Reserve raising rates, maybe it will dampen it, but it's not going down to 1.4%, which it was a year ago. I mean, in January 21. I mean, it's just
Can the Federal Reserve pull it off without a recession? Yes or
probably
no?
not.
No. Do you think that Musk in the end will buy Twitter? Yes or no? Does he want to lower the
He
price?
probably will at a much lower price.
Yeah. Where do you see the S&P at the end of the year, if you have an estimate?
Oh, you know, it's very hard to do that, to come up with, and I don't think it would have much credibility, but I think that it will be a tough year, and I think you'll probably be able to invest in this market at lower levels.
Now, something funnier. Your favorite city in Italy?
Milano.
Uh-huh. Your favorite dish?
Oh, gosh. So many things. Pasta.
Don't tell me pasta with meatballs.
No.
Your favorite actor or singer in Italy?
Sophia
Director?
Loren. Sophia Loren is my favorite.
Ah. You know that somebody says that your eyes resemble hers.
Yes. Thank you.
And to conclude, do you know who the Maneskin are?
Well, you asked me inside, so now I do. But I did not know the band before you mentioned it inside.
And do you know what was the last Italian company being listed at the New York Stock Exchange?
What was it? Any? Illy? Oh, Zegna. Really?
Yes.
Okay. No, I did not know that.
That's it, in December. Well, thank you very
Thank
much for
you.
your time. It
Thank
was
you.
nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for all of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Amato. Thank you for coming, everyone. Great.